Okay, welcome to Sprint 111 review. Get started. So I'll do the Sprint statistics. Harpreet will do UI, Adam on providers, Tina on automate, Joe on platform, Alberto for API, Suyog on documentation. So these past 2 weeks we had 210 PRs merged, and there they are. And it was UI Classic in the lead, integration test, and then ManageIQ coming up third. And UI Classic is not going to get disqualified for getting in the way, if that's a horse reference. All right. So there was again 291 open PRs opened, 210 merged, and here's the types of PRs. The enhancement took the lead with bug and test second and third. And for the health, kind of just flat, not much movement compared to last week or 2 weeks ago. Okay, over to Harpreet.
Hello, everyone. We had 57 UI PRs merged across all of the UI repos this sprint. Out of that, 31 were bug fixes and 6 enhancements and so on. Some of the main highlights on bug fixes: an issue was fixed to make open URL checkbox enabled when creating a new custom button under VM and instance, and also when the display for value is set to single entity. Another fix was made on authentication tab in settings. When adding a new trusted forest entries, it was the add button was acting up a little weird. So that issue got fixed, and an issue was fixed when trying to edit a VM through a provider relationship. 2 issues were fixed on request detail screen when trying to load a request detail with dialog with multiple tabs, and also if it had a dialog tag field, it was throwing an error. So issue was fixed there. A fix was made to roles tree to put back main configuration feature in the tree. It was missing because Configuration Explorer was moved out of the settings to the top right menu header, and the tree was not reflecting the new structure. A couple of issues fixed on the service UI. A fix was made to load a correct dialog when clicking on a custom button in service UI for services resource VM. And also on the VM detail screen, there was provider information missing, so that got fixed. And since there are a lot of bugs in the main classic UI repo, it's difficult to go over each one of those. So I have added a link at the bottom of the slide for anyone who's interested in looking at them. Next slide, please. And for enhancements, a change was made to breadcrumbs to show nested services hierarchy. And for the next 3 items, I have screenshots to go over. So next slide, please. So when a user logs in for the first time and they don't have any provider, they are redirected to infrastructure provider screen. And this screen now has new looks. It's a more informative. It has a add new provider button right on the screen to let user know that that's what they needed to start using the product. And there's also a link to the documentation on the screen that takes you to a section in the guide for managing providers. Next slide, please. On the group summary screen, now it shows a warning message when if a group belongs to a filter that has been outdated or has been removed from the product, to allow the user to edit the group, and so they can remove the outdated filters. So that's a nice GIF to show the process. Next slide, please. And finally, on the V2V side, add download log button under a kebab menu was added to conversion host list items. And that's all I have for the UI. On to Adam.
Thanks, Harpreet. So on the core side, we did a lot of refactoring to clean up a lot of the overrides that the different providers used in their persister inventory collections. Basically, all 3 of the infra providers had small customizations to the inventory collections that they inherit from, and they could pretty much all be moved into core. And so all 3 of the infra providers have essentially box stock inventory collections that they use from core. So all the little inconsistencies made it hard to understand when you're going around between providers. And so got a lot of nice code deletes there and getting everybody on a common set of collections. So there are a couple PRs to core there, and then the cleanups from the three infra providers. On the SCVMM side, last sprint we talked about adding a new spec helper to do full database comparisons when you're comparing different types of refresh. This sprint for SCVMM, we added that test to compare between graph and classic refresh, and out of that we found a bunch of small inconsistencies which were fixed. And now we're actually defaulting to graph refresh for SCVMM, which means that VMware is the last provider that doesn't default to graph refresh so far. So we're getting close there. Next slide. So also last sprint, we moved all the generic relationship methods for the inventory collections out of VMware and into Core. And then this sprint, we updated Overt to use those and delete all of their custom relationship methods. So now Overt is also, all of the genealogy and folder methods are derived from Core. On the Amazon side, Alex updated the regions and instance types to pull in a few new ones that have been added. And we also added back previously disabled regions. Historically, we had always allowed all regions on the upstream version. At a certain point, they had been, a few of them had been disabled, and we've gone back to allowing all regions to be added on the upstream appliance for testing. And on Ansible Tower, Lucy made an improvement to running templates to allow a zone to be provided so that the user can specify which zone they want their template to be run in. And that's it for providers. Over to Tina.
Thanks, Adam. Good morning. We had 12 PRs merged this sprint. Eric resolved the dynamic dialog refresh issue and added the regular expression support for dynamic text area boxes. As Adam mentioned, Lucy enhanced the Ansible Tower template runner as part of an enhancement to be able to specify a zone when executing an Ansible Tower job template from Automate. Ramon added the ability to import and export generic object definitions. Billy fixed a VMware template provisioning email issue. And finally, Drew and I resolved the VM retire request approval issue. That's it for Automate. Next line over to Joe.
Thank you, Tina. An impressive 31 PRs were merged into the platform space to sprint. Joe R. led the charge with 12 PRs, advancing the Ruby and Rails version upgrades, with Julian also contributing to this effort. Nick C. fixed MIQ dialog seed by adding scope to region validation. Nick also made a fix to exclude the metric-based table to avoid child tables from being added to the publication. And Libor fixed an issue where assigned filters were not working when a data store was deleted, which had the filters assigned to it. Next slide, please. There we go. For enhancements, Keenan made a couple. He enhanced virtual attributes to work around a race condition, and he made another enhancement to avoid duplicate code by leveraging alias matcher. Joe R made a couple of enhancements, one to drop ID region dependencies, since ManageIQ schema will do that for us, and the second to add support for Rails 5.1 and UUID primary keys for active record ID regions by forcing all non-UUID columns to be big serial. Nick C. also contributed a couple of enhancements, one by adding a logical replication config handler that selects the info from the PG subscription table rather than the PG logical extension table. And he added the replication worker count to subscriptions, enabling more detailed status of the subscription. And Keenan kept the rock rolling up the never-ending hill and improving our test infrastructure with a couple of PRs. Libor contributed a couple of refactoring PRs, one that will improve report generation code readability by refactoring build HTML column, and the second that leveraged stable sort by to improve code flow and readability. Next slide, please. For technical debt, Nick removed the gems pending dependency from HA admin. Keenan updated virtual delegates to all out nil, and Julian both migrated us from factory girl to factory bot and removed the RSS table. That's it for the platform space. On to Alberto for the API CRUD.
Thanks, Joe. So for the API side, we had a couple of enhancements this sprint. First one is by Miha to provide us the ability to provision physical servers. So one was providing exposing the physical server provision request type, so you can post new of that kind in API requests, as well as exposing a couple of collections and sub-collections here showing customization templates, collection and resource, Pixie images, customization template sub-collections, as well as Pixie servers. So that would allow clients to fetch that information needed. Next slide, please. Okay, next enhancement. Don't see the name. David? Yep, thanks. So this was continuing the enhancement to the options for API providers that's needed for API-driven forms. And in this enhancement, we're also including the regions that are available for that supported provider, as shown here in bold, with the options of the providers. And that's it for the API. Next slide, please.
For documentation, we had 6 PRs merged in this sprint, which 5 were bugs and 1 was enhancement. We've added a procedure and note about log file segments in the general configuration guide, and we've made improvements to the sysprep enabled and the VLAN section of the provisioning virtual machines using cloud init procedure. For documentation.
Okay, well, that concludes Sprint 111 Sprint Review. We'll see you in 2 weeks for Sprint 112 on May 29th. Thanks.